Today's video is sponsored by Hyperspace, a tabletop game of interstellar conquest. Hyperspace features 25 unique alien civilizations, including, and this is a slight spoiler, several races from the works of H.P. Lovecraft, all vying for control of a newly discovered star cluster. Uniquely, Hyperspace features no upkeep phase, meaning that games are usually shorter, about 90 minutes for 4 players. What's more, play never really stops, so there's constant action. If this sounds good to you, check out the link to Peterson Games down in the description.
Hokey religions and ancient weapons are no match for a good blaster at your side, kid.
You don't believe in the Force, do you?
Kid, I've flown from one side of this galaxy to the other. I've seen a lot of strange stuff, but I've never seen anything to make me believe there's one all-powerful force controlling everything. There's no mystical energy field that controls my destiny. It's all a lot of simple tricks and nonsense.
Despite the Jedi being present in the galaxy for thousands of years and playing a seemingly major role in galactic affairs, especially after the Old Republic's demilitarization, by the time of A New Hope or The Force Awakens, the Jedi seem to be mostly a myth. And remember, A New Hope takes place only 19 years after Order 66. How is it possible that people forgot about the wonders of the Jedi in that short time period? Even Admiral Mahdi, who would have been alive during the Clone Wars and in the core, doesn't have much respect for the Force. Well, the easy answer is that initially George intended the Jedi Purge to have been further in the past, and the quote is simply one of many oddities created by the prequels. But that's obviously not a satisfactory answer, and I think we can do better. Let's look at things from a logical, in-universe perspective, and let's get the obvious out of the way first. The Jedi were a small force of about 10,000 in a galaxy of a few hundred quadrillion beings. Thus, most would never have even seen a Jedi in person, and the Order most likely would have played no role whatsoever in their lives. Still, they were legendary warriors, known as the Guardians of Peace during the Republic era, and they sometimes were involved directly in galactic disputes. During the Clone Wars, for example, Anakin and Obi-Wan are described as well-known heroes in the Revenge of the Sith novelization. So it's not like people didn't know the Jedi existed, and even Han acknowledges this. The real issue is whether they are real. Not whether they existed, but whether they actually did anything miraculous. Whether they had genuine powers, or just overstated tricks, as Han said. This general sense of doubt was due not only to the machinations of Palpatine, but also the nature of the Force and the Jedi Order itself. Basically, everything the Jedi did could be hand-waved away and given a rational explanation. For a lot of their history, especially modern Republic history, they didn't really do much. Sure, they helped mediate conflicts and sometimes won battles, but who can't do that without the Force? The Jedi weren't doing advertising campaigns, and a large part of being a Jedi is about inwardness and self-betterment. Thus, it's very easy to understand reality as being simply overstated legends. This is especially true given the fact that there was always a sort of quasi-legendary status about the Jedi, and what was real or not wasn't clear. As an example, Anakin on Tatooine, who had never seen a Jedi, believed that they were basically unkillable, godlike beings. When the Jedi were vilified, it's very likely that their power was simply seen as exaggerated and now debunked. This is especially true in a galaxy as large and as strange as the Star Wars galaxy. There are beings who, without aid of the Force, could shapeshift or even read minds. We also have Palpatine, who of course hid his own Force sensitivity while painting the Jedi as traitorous and deceitful, general feelings which had also been bubbling up for some time in the Old Republic, at least among some. Now that being said, of course there were some who would have understood or seen the first-hand power of the Jedi, but most of them were slaughtered. The Jedi Order was very insular. Most Jedi certainly did not have a family, and most were friends with primarily other Jedi. There are, of course, exceptions. However, those people most likely kept quiet because of coercion, perhaps indirectly, to not speak positively about the Order. As we see in the rise of Darth Vader, the Jedi hunt was public, and the Jedi were labeled enemies of the state. So, speaking in a positive manner about them wasn't something you'd want to do openly. And even if you did, you would have been drowned out by the much more public and much larger negative smear against them. And we've seen in Legends especially how the Empire can absolutely dominate conversations and attitudes, especially in the core where their presence was more significant. I'll link a video which explains that in greater detail, but the Jedi were fully vilified for almost 2 decades, and in canon, we hear from Del Meeko how he heard hundreds of stories growing up about the horrors and terror of the Jedi Order. Spreading of the truth was also limited by Imperial control of the HoloNet, and the free sharing of ideas, even the truth, was generally not possible. Even with all of this, many of course did remember or know the powers of the Jedi, but many more probably did not. Let's look at Han. He grew up as an orphan, wouldn't have had any direct experience with the Jedi before A New Hope, and although he had probably heard some rumors about the Force, the Empire had so thoroughly controlled the narrative about the Order, painting them as not only fraudulent, but also treasonous, that the stories were seen simply as legends. For those in the Outer Rim, for example, the lack of knowledge of the Jedi is even more explainable. Even under the Free Old Republic, they may have heard about the largest battles, or even names of famous Jedi like Anakin Skywalker, but they wouldn't have understood the Order's power. Just like how I know the military exists, but as a civilian, don't really understand the specifics of how it operates, and certainly not what a general actually does. As another example, I know that ninjas historically were a thing, but I know so little about them, and so much of their nature is basically a legend to me in the West, that a dedicated misinformation campaign could probably make me believe almost anything about them, even that they didn't exist. This phenomenon would have continued even after the Galactic Civil War, and I think Rey shows this well. Of course, she knows someone named Luke saved the galaxy and was said to be very powerful, but who really knows exactly what happens? There aren't YouTube videos of Luke dueling Vader, and most of her life is spent scavenging anyway. The greater affairs of the galaxy, while interesting, don't really affect her day-to-day life, and something like the powers of the Jedi is just so far away from her as an individual, at least until the events of The Force Awakens. So that's my attempt to reconcile the Jedi Order as they're seen in the prequels with the events of A New Hope. How do you think I did? Does my explanation make sense? Do you still not buy it? Please let me know all of that and more down in the comments. Before I end today's video, I do want to announce that I will be streaming tonight, most likely Drunk Fortnite with the Family Bovine. This has been a viewer favorite. Last time we streamed on his channel, we had about 200 concurrent viewers. Hopefully you guys will join me at twitch.tv/EckhartsLadder. It will be a super fun night, and I've been streaming a lot anyway. Today's question of the day comes from Michael, who asks about my least favorite elements from Legends and canon. So I'm not sure I have a least favorite element of either expanded universe. In Legends, something I didn't like was how complex and convoluted the Old Republic history was, especially the many wars between the Sith and the Jedi. I found it to be a little bit repetitive and not very interesting. I'm really excited to see how new canon handles that. On the other hand, something I don't like about the new EU is how quickly the Empire disappears, although I do have faith that that disappearance can make a little bit more sense with the Alphabet Squadron books and as we learn more about what actually happened to the Empire. But the New Republic, I think, was given a little too much power too early. It doesn't make sense how they militarized quickly enough to destroy a large portion of the Imperial Navy, and I'm not sure I'm a fan of the general politics or the demilitarization either, but that's just my opinion. Also, let me know what you guys think of this question down below, and if you have something you'd like me to answer at the end of a future video, let me know that down below. Anyway, until next time guys, this is EckhartsLadder. May the Force be with you.